The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. The following video is presented by the Center for Educational Media in partnership with Professional Educators of Tennessee's Leader U Conference. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
Welcome. This is the second session. My name is Megan Benton, and I'm new to the board this year. And today we're here with Angie Markham. And she wanted me to shorten her bio a little bit. She says that she's executive director at Ivy Academy in Chattanooga since 2011, but ultimately she's a teacher at heart. And so she's going to share with us today some of her insight on outdoor learning for every classroom and every course.
Okay, so by the end of this session, you will experience how physical movement and engagement foster a sense of contentment in students, which positively contribute to the development of the whole child and consequently the child's academics. Have access to cost-free tools that foster academic engagement for any subject by using real-life items that students encounter daily. See examples of how to do this for your grade level, or know where to reference tools to do this for your grade level. And a resource page is provided that we'll give out at the end, and then we can also share that electronically, and see some astounding data that supports the efficacy of this demonstrated methods. So as I go through this information, I'm going to talk really fast to get through the informational part. The informational part is important though, because it shows you why you want to use these methods. How many of you were in the keynote speaker with Graham Mr. Music? Okay, how many of you were in Ryan Jackson's keynote? Okay, well, in the music one, he talked about how music was a hook to get the investment of your student, and it helps them just connect to whatever they're learning. We are doing this also with outdoors and with movement, so we want you to see our data, and that way you'll be convinced even more, hey, I want to try this in my classroom, okay? So, boop. During this first segment of our session, we'll see evidence of the effectiveness of these teaching methods. That's what I'm doing. It'll last about 20 to 25 minutes. And then during the following segments, you'll see examples of how to implement these methods in your classroom, resources for doing that, and actually participate in a sample lesson. And that'll be about 60 minutes and about 20 minutes each. So we'll do 3 different segments for that, okay? Boop. Introduction of presenters. You met me, I'm Angie Markham. We also have Chassie Foster. Chassie, wave. Chassie is very unique. She has her endorsements in English, ag science, and special education. Do we have anybody else who's triple endorsed like that in the room? I don't think so. And her undergrad is in women's studies. Now I know you're all surprised she's now not out earning a living with that one, but she's here with us today and she's amazing, and she's really going to help show the cross-curricular piece for what we're going to do. We also have Katie Reed. Katie is our mathematician extraordinaire, teaches all things math, and she's really going to emphasize the math. And the reason we do that is because math seems to be one of the harder outside things for teachers. So we're going to show you some things, especially once you get up in the upper levels, math, Algebra 2, Pre-Cal. So we're going to cover an example of that for you. Then we have Lynn Grabowski that you've already met. And Lynn is our art teacher at Ivy next year, and she's also an expert on all things outdoors and naturey. What's a rock star teacher? One whose students remember how you treated them, helped them grow, and what you taught them long after they leave your classroom. And you are all rock star teachers, but we did give the award to the youngest in experience and the most experienced. Like I said that? Yeah. Boop. Thank you. Why did we ask about the royalty in the room? Because some things have changed, yet some things remain the same over all these years. And just since I've started teaching, man, the difference. So like when I started teaching, and I'm a math teacher, we still use the tables in the back of the book for Algebra 2 when you're looking at, or geometry when you're looking at the value of a trig function. Scientific calculators were still new. What a change. But the culture is changing so quickly. It has changed even since, I would say, 2010. It's just a total shift in how we need to communicate with our students. Used to, students would come to us in a different mindset with different goals. Now we've got just, it's just different. So I wanted you to see, this is on our campus. That's a Great Spangled Fritillary on a bergamot. How do you say it, Lynn?
Fritillary.
Fritillary. So we do keep data on those, and that's uploaded on iNaturalist. Okay, next one. So there is a problem in that the culture's changing faster than our methods in the classroom. That's what I was getting at. A whole lot faster. When we did surveys with our teachers about what were your biggest challenges to connecting with your students, being able to get your students to learn, because we all know we teach very well, but it doesn't matter how well we teach. What matters is how well they learn. So we did a survey, and we came up with these two. These were the top two. We've got learner motivation is missing in many students, and instructors must bypass obstacles to engage the learner. So I'm going to just briefly mention each of those. Used to, students came to the room and they knew, well, I'm here. I'm going to school because of my next step in life, whatever that is. This helps prepare me for my next step in life. We've got so many students today, they're not even sure they want to go on with life. I mean, that's just the truth. And so they don't have that motivation. I'm going to school because I want to graduate and go to college and major in such and such, or I want to be in military, or I want to take over my dad's business. That is largely absent. So the motivation is not there for the student. And then also the obstacles. Today, more than ever, our students come to us with so much baggage. Like the whole time I was growing up in school, I never even heard of one of my friends even mentioning suicide or anything about suicide. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm touching the mic. It's at least a weekly occurrence that we have to deal with something like that. How many of you had to file a DCS report this past year? How many of you had to file multiple DCS reports this past year? Yeah, our kids have a lot on them, and it's a different audience that we're trying to get invested in what we are doing. So we've got to find a way to bypass those obstacles, and that's what this Leader U is focusing on. It's the whole child. So we want to find that hook some way, and so we get their investment into learning. Boop. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at how one school, which is our school, Ivy Academy, has utilized citizen science and outdoor learning and movement to increase attendance, positive attitude, and ultimately academics, because, boop, your child is more, your student is more than just a brain. And they are. So, boop. The data presented on the following slides is the average of 2 years of collected data from parents. And over 50% of our parents responded both years. So we feel like this at least gives us a pretty good picture. Now, when you really get into data analysis and scientific data, you can look at this and say, wow, that could be skewed so many ways. And it could, but it does give us a broad picture since we've got over 50% of our parents participating both years, and we took the average of that. So I'm going to go through the outdoor learning surveys that we ask about. Has outdoor learning time and physical movement within the school day, how has it affected your students' overall well-being and academic performance? So those terms there in blue are the two things we ask about for each of these items, okay? Why did we take these surveys and collect the data in the first place? Because over and over again we began to see changes in our students and hear from parents about the differences they were seeing in their students. And it was so overwhelming that we were like, well, let's check on this. And parents and guardians know their students better than anyone else. But if you've got somebody coming and saying, hey, over and over again, my kid doesn't hate to go to school anymore. They were truant last year. They're not this year. We used to go through war to get them to come to school, and now they love to come to school. We heard that so much, we said we're going to do this survey. So I'm going to go really quickly through the data, let you see it, and then we'll go on to the more fun stuff. Boop. So the first question we ask is, how has outdoor learning time and more physical movement during the school day resulted in better student grades? Well, we had 90% of parents say yes. 8% said they couldn't tell, and 2% said no. So 90% better grades. Now, if we were getting 90% better grades and we weren't doing well on our achievement scores, that would be a problem. But we are doing well on our achievement scores. So that is a positive indicator right there. Boop. Better student attitude about school. Has outdoor learning time and more physical movement during the school day resulted in better student attitude about school? 95% of parents said yes. 3% said they couldn't tell, and 2% said no. You know, relationship is the biggest thing that helps you with your student. But if you've got a student who's sitting there with a bad attitude, you can be my bad attitude student, and I'm trying to relate, you can't start that relationship until you take care of that attitude. So if we've got 95% of the responding parents saying, yes, my student has a better attitude about school, that is a winner. Boop. Next thing we asked about was decreased absences. Has outdoor learning time and movement within the school day resulted in fewer absences for your students? So we had 61% of parents said yes. 30 said they couldn't tell or they didn't know, and then 9% said no. So that's not as astounding, but that's still impressive if you can make an impact on students attending more for 61%. We've got better student health or fitness. That ties into attitude, and that also ties into attendance as well. Has outdoor learning time and more physical movement during the school day resulted in better student health and fitness? 90% said yes. 6% said they couldn't tell, and 4% said no. So that, if a kid does not feel good, that's going to affect them negatively in the classroom. So we're impacting, according to parents, 90% there. Boop. The next thing we asked about was decreased anxiety or depression. Has outdoor learning time and more physical movement during their school day resulted in less anxiety or depression for your student? 76% said yes. 19% said they couldn't tell, and 5% said no. Well, you know, you hear in the media right now the great need for mental health services at our schools and increased need for counselors, and that's very true. But if we can do something that helps decrease the anxiety and depression, we need to do it. So this method has worked for a lot of our students. Boop. And I just added this slide. This was just out from the National Journal of Child Development. They did a study, and they had that teen anxiety and depression was up 70% compared to 2 decades ago. And you know that's true. You've got your kids in the classroom, and you see it all the time. So we have to do something. They're coming to us. It is a brutal culture that they're thrown into, because they put the wrong things in their mouths, they eat the wrong foods, they watch the wrong things on the screen all the time. It's just a really, really harsh environment. We need to do something that's going to counteract that. Boop. The next thing we asked about was attention span. So we've got 82% that say their students' attention span has increased since they've been spending outdoor learning time. 13% said couldn't tell, 5% said no. Boop. Then we ask about, now this was really astounding too, decreased or eliminated ADD and ADHD meds. So we had 53% that said yes. Now you're going to look at that and go, oh my word, does every kid at that school take ADD and ADHD meds? Well, we do have a really, really high percentage that do, okay? Really, really high, because we're an outdoor school, and that just seems to draw them like a magnet. But also what it tells you is that there's needs that are not being met in the regular classroom for these students, for these parents to be looking for solutions for their kids. And so they gravitate towards this solution. 32% said they couldn't tell or it did not apply. So this is the part of the graph where maybe these are the kids who don't take ADD or ADHD meds, and then 15% said no. But if you take the part that it applied to and you do the stats on that, of the students that applied to, 78% saw a difference, either in the amount of their medications or were able to eliminate it. So now we're not only impacting learning, we're also impacting budget, because when you have to provide service time to administer ADHD meds, or you've got a student who has ADHD and it's in their IEP as a other health impairment, and you got to provide them services. So now we're actually impacting the school budget to free up more funds to help students in other ways besides servicing things that we can remedy. Okay. Boop. So here's data for other health benefits from outdoor learning time and more physical movement during the school day. Increased mobility and agility. We have on record to date 3 cerebral palsy students who were on once weekly physical therapy as prescribed in their IEP when they came to our school. All 3 were able to completely drop physical therapy due to increased mobility and agility, which the therapists attribute to increased movement and consistent practice at walking on the uneven terrain of our trails. One of the students, when they came to us, we were actually going to require him to wear a helmet because we're around so many rocks, and he did have to walk with a walking stick at first. And we were concerned that he would fall down and hurt himself, and we'd have to call the ambulance. But now he does great. I mean, he can actually run a little bit and not fall. So it is great therapy. And there are kids who just don't move. Man, and then when you get to the middle school and high school level, they don't have recess. We are supposed to have movement worked into our week, but most of the time, a lot of times it is not. And they just move between classes when they change, and that's it. And that's not enough movement for some who need to develop more. Vitamin D production for various regions and ethnicities within our nation, vitamin D deficiency ranks as high as 85%, with urban minorities being affected the most. Ivy student minimum outdoor daily time is around 30 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes of daily sunlight time is recommended for vitamin D production in individuals who do not get adequate vitamin D from their foods. So vitamin D deficiency is just a step in further health problems that then we treat. So in our nation, we don't really have a health care problem, we have a health problem. And we've got to look at ways to fix that. Boop. Student movement data, so this is what we do. Our students move an average minimum of 30 minutes per day. Okay, that's minimum. We keep track of this data by Fitbits, and we pay an educational assistant a stipend to gather all the data for reference. So we got the Fitbits initially with a grant from Memorial Hospital in Chattanooga, and then we keep the data, but were any of y'all in Dr. Swafford's session on data? She is the data queen, the data kitty. We have had trouble keeping up with the data. Teachers couldn't do it with something extra for them to do, and you want to do that, but let's face it, do you have time to do that? No. And then educational assistants, they didn't really have time either, so we just said, hey, we'll pay you this stipend, you stay after school. So now we have a Google spreadsheet that has it in it, and we can refer back to it, and we can make sure that we're getting the movement that we need to. Boop. So this is where we're at. If I said all that, and then the end result, the reason we're here is academics. If we didn't have good academics, then you couldn't believe us. So achievement, we're a good solid 3 out of 4. The state named this chronically out of school. It should be named attendance. We're not doing good at being chronically out of school, okay? This is your attendance rating, but we're 4 out of 4. Graduation rate, 4 out of 4. Student academic growth last year, 1.2. Years before, we had a 5 and 3. So, you know, growth fluctuates because if you have a 5 every year, they're going to be graduating college before they get out of middle school. You just don't have a 5 every year. But additionally, I'll tell you this. How many of you thought that your growth rate was a result of all the individual TVOS, or the growth rate in all the individual courses? Did you think that? Anybody think that? It's not. Like, we had all 3s and 4s and 1 and it resulted in a 1.2. So I don't really feel like that's a reflection of how we grew our students, because that doesn't look so great, but it is what it is. Okay, boop. So before we move on to the fun part, so you can see how any classroom can utilize the tools of outdoor learning time and more physical movement during the school day, are there any questions about that data? I try to not have people sitting while I'm teaching for longer than that time, and I'm sorry you had to sit and listen to that, but I wanted you to see it and get that in. We really are seeing good results, and so we want to share this, and it's fun. Any questions on that data? Any others? You want to flip back and look at a slide or anything like that? Okay. I mentioned our terrain. So a lot of our trail looks like this, that's close to the school. It is part of a riverbed, North Chickamauga Creek. We sit right at the edge of North Chickamauga Creek. So if you had to walk on that every day, you do increase your balance skills, your leg muscles, your core. And for kids who don't move very much at all, this is great. This particular photo is of an annual event we have called Day at the Races. And our middle schoolers, they compete to have the fastest boat. They can only use natural materials and twine. And so these little boats that you see out there, they're racing. The creek flows that way, so they put them in up there and see whose boat gets down there the fastest. Some of the boats don't look like boats, but they have fun. They have fun doing it. But we have access to 7,000 acres of T-deck land. So all this we can access. We've got outdoor classrooms. Our students hike up to the top of the mountain at least once annually. And, we have a great partnership with Tennessee State Parks. We're all wearing you can't see it here. I'm sorry if I keep on messing with the mic. We have on our Environmental Institute, the State Parks Environmental Institute t-shirt today. But not every school has these amenities for outdoors, so we want to show you what you can do even if you don't have that. The reason we've been able to develop it so much is because we do have that. Boop. So what's up next? Fun for you. Miss Lynn is going to cover examples of citizen science. Take about 15 to 20 minutes. Then our group, then she's going to lead our group in a lesson where we'll actually use the iNaturalist app and we'll collect some data. And then Katie's going to present examples of high school math lessons using outdoor learning time and movement. And then Chassie's going to do the outdoor cross-curricular. And then we're going to share a resource page, take questions. And when we go to the outside lesson, whoever gets the most wins this little. We've got 2 of these. So the 2 highest rankers will get a tote to take with rulers, little mini journals, hand lenses, so you can start a citizen science box of tools for your classroom. Boop. Okay, this is where Lynn starts.
So I teach citizen science, and I'll also be our art teacher this coming fall. And one of the things that I do for the school is I actually maintain databases on pretty much anything that happens outside in the North Chickamauga Creek Gorge that you can track data on. We've tracked lichen growth, salamanders, water quality. Really, if it has to do with nature and you can think of it, we track it, and we do keep our own in-house information. But for people who can't build a database or don't want to build a database, we actually have some really great ways that you can still do citizen science and have the information housed for you elsewhere. So kind of first thing first is, who can tell me what they think citizen science is? Is there anybody who doesn't know what citizen science is? Maybe. So to be a citizen scientist, you are a person who doesn't necessarily have any special training or very minimal special training, who goes out and collects scientific data in the field. This means anybody can do it. And I have done citizen science projects with very itty-bitty children all the way up through college students and adults. So it's very flexible. The key for citizen science is to observe and report. So you are witnessing possible data, say monarch migration, observe how many monarch butterflies you see, and then report to an entity who's collecting the data. Now that reporting could be your own database, or it could be a local, national, or international organization that is also tracking this information. What's great is from there is real world scientists who are doing research in the field are going to use your data. That's kind of where this slide gets to is citizen science really provides strength in numbers. If you are doing research on lichens, you're not going to get a grant to pay a team of people to watch lichens grow 1 millimeter per year. It's just not going to happen. So it's great to be able to have people from all over the place over a longer period of time who are willing to work for free, because honestly it's kind of fun to go do this and collect your data for you, and then you can analyze it from there. It gets people out in nature. Everybody becomes a scientist. It's super easy to integrate into your math classes, especially for you, those of you who are frustrated about not having graphing opportunities. Great graphing opportunities. And we've even actually managed to integrate it into our English classes, which we'll talk about a bit when we get to that. Raises awareness of situations that you might not have been previously familiar with, and also just kind of fosters exploratory learning and interest. It lets kids go out and actually be the scientist. And that's one thing I love to tell them when they hit my classroom is, from right now, you are a real world scientist. You're not just a student anymore. You are doing real world important science. And additionally, it gives you more of that outdoor learning time and movement. So it's really kind of a nicer alternative to just sitting in the classroom and maybe getting a lengthy PowerPoint presentation. So I've already kind of introduced you to iNaturalist, and this is such a great organization. If you're one of those people who does not want to or can't put together your own database, they will house your information for you, and the easiest way to do that is through creating a project like I've had you guys add. You can make your projects public, you can make them private. It's a really great way to kind of monitor what your students are collecting data-wise. What I love about this organization is it is huge, and they are collecting data on literally anything you can imagine. If it's outside and it's alive, or a sign of something alive, or it used to be alive, you can collect data on it. So I mean, birds, grasses, butterflies, fish, you name it, you can collect it. It is super easy to do. When you guys are in your app, there's a button on the bottom that looks like a little camera and says observe. You take a picture of whatever it is you see. It'll tell you, it'll ask you, what did you see? When you click on that, it actually gives you a list of options, so you don't even have to know. So if I see a bird out there and I have no idea what it is, but I got a great photo of it, it'll actually give me a list of similar entries that look like this bird, and it will likely tell me. Let's say I'm still not sure from there. It also functions as a social media network. So other people who are citizen scientists just like you that are using this out in the field, let's say one of them's an ornithologist, they see your bird picture and you said, this is an American robin, and they're like, no way that's an American robin, I think it's this, and they'll tell you why. So it's also a great way to learn new information and how to identify other organisms as well. From there, if you have 3 people who agree with you that what you saw is really what you saw, let's say I saw a black widow spider and all 3 of you were like, yep, that's totally a black widow spider, it becomes research grade. And at that point, scientists in the field can search research grade only options and do their research from your photos. So super great. This is international, it's worldwide, and really kind of a cool way to do any kind of project that you want to. This makes it super flexible for your classroom. It's free. It's also a website, so if you don't have a way to access apps in your classroom, or you don't want kids getting out their phone, but you've got laptops or Chromebooks, you guys can go out and do nature journals, get your writing and art in, and then have them enter it from there. You don't have to load photos to it, and you can take note of your location and the date and the time while you were outside and enter it manually from the website. So there's a lot of different ways to use this program, which is really cool. Next. And so what is an observation? I mean, an observation, you're going to need to know certain information. One of the ways that I love to do this is through nature journals, and so if you get one of the prize kits, that's why we've got mini journals in there. It's important to keep the same format each time. So when you enter information into something like iNaturalist or a similar program, you're always going to need the same information to create your observation. And that just makes it easy to track the conditions each time, the location each time. If you're looking at, say, a specific bird and you notice it comes out at the same time every day, it's important to always record that information so you can compare it. Really kind of what's ultimately important about citizen science is collecting that data over time. So kind of when she mentioned earlier that we'll actually be able to look at this project next year if we come back and do it again and compare their data to your data. So kind of a neat way that we can repeat the project. But you need to put who you are, where you saw it, what you saw, and that's kind of the important one. Make sure you really look at what it is that you see. I do get a lot of students who see an orange butterfly and automatically think it's a monarch. So it's always good to really kind of discern what you're looking at. That can be tricky with wildlife. When you saw it, and of course evidence of what you saw. So if you're able to either put in a photo, record a sound, that'll help you too. If you're just working out of a field journal, draw and make sure you're looking at what you draw. I usually encourage kids to not even look at the paper and just draw while they're staring at the thing. Does it sometimes make a wonky drawing? Yes, but they actually get more detail by the time they're done than if they just stared at the paper and draw what they think they see. So you're building observational skills, and this is actually great for your testing too, because how many kids do you have get a question wrong because they're like, oh, I didn't read the question right. They need those observational skills. So there are a lot of resources that you guys can use that are just databases that already exist out there that are continually doing and using citizen science research. First one, I do use this one a lot in my classroom, Hands on the Land. This is out of Great Smoky Mountain National Park. They are primarily concerned with air quality. And so the three that I use from this program the most is we do lichen monitoring, which tells us how our air quality is depending on how fast our lichens grow or whether they grow at all and what types we have. They also do salamander monitoring, see what varieties we have, how many, when they come out, so on and so forth, and terrestrial snails. If you have air pollution, you probably have acid rain. Acid rain will break down snail shells, and so we'll actually look at the snails, see were they alive, were they dead, is there damage to the snails, how many to their shells, how many did we find. There are several parks that are doing a lot of research as well as private partners using the data that is collected from this information. So they're doing some really cool stuff. And what's great about most of their projects is they give you a complete lesson plan as well as charts to do whatever math you have to do. And the lichen one in particular, if you want that graphing project, Hands on the Land's lichen project, great for graphing. Nature's Notebook, this one's a little bit more on how to create a nature journal, and if you're not naturally a journaling kind of person, it's useful to have some guidance in that. When I mentioned earlier, it's important to kind of keep the same format every time. I do require students in my class to keep a nature journal, and at the end of the year, that's kind of what I look at to see if they made any progress. So they have that the whole time, and that is something they also get to take home once we're done too. So you can keep a look at continual progress. You don't necessarily have to do huge testing because you can see their entire body of knowledge in one book. And they get used to working with a format. So you can see, did their observations improve? Were they following the format? But this gives you several different lesson plans as well as formats to create nature journals. And I believe they have reporting opportunities as well. Project NOAA, this is similar to iNaturalist in that it's a little bit of everything, but it's created specifically for photographers. So for those of you who want to incorporate more arts into your programs and you've got some students who are really great photographers, this is the site for you. Or if you're really just, you want to do some research on a specific creature, you're studying a specific organism, look it up on the site. You will see some of the most amazing photography that you've ever seen. Similar to iNaturalist, people can rate this as to whether or not, you know, this is the creature that you saw and whether or not it's research grade. So they're still gathering some of that same information too, but the focus here is primarily on like photographing as many organisms as beautifully as humanly possible. So it's almost kind of fun just to flip through this and just look at the pictures. eBird, this is out of Cornell's ornithology lab. They are one of the only schools in the country that has a really, truly amazing comprehensive ornithology program for studying birds. And they have lesson plans on here as well. They primarily track bird migration. And I believe they do have an app for this, not just the website, so useful there too. And great way to track your spring and your fall bird migrations. They have, if you get onto Cornell's website just in general too, not just eBird, they've got a whole guide where you've got like migration paths, it's got pictures of the birds, their nests, their eggs, when their breeding seasons are, you can hear recordings of the bird calls. So if you really wanted to have your students do a more in-depth project with their birding observations, go deeper into the ornithology website with Cornell and you'll get a wealth of information. Journey North, I use this one really frequently. Their primary focus is how climate change is affecting migration patterns, and they mostly track the monarch butterflies. And one of the things I love about them is where it says view maps. You can actually watch a live-time map of the monarch migration. If you see just one coming through and you want to know where the rest of them are, you can pull up the map and say, oh, there's a whole bunch of them just north of here, and know that you're about to have a migration event, so you can track it live. But they also track things like signs of spring, signs of fall. They track robin migration, they track hummingbird migration, and I think a few other creatures that don't really live in this area. But I know I think there's one for whales if you live somewhere coastal, and I forget what the other ones are because they don't live here. But really kind of wide national website for us to track migration in conjunction with seasonal change and climate change. All right, this one here, this is the Aquabugs. They've got an app. It functions kind of like a field guide to track for macroinvertebrates. So these are the little insect larvae that live in water, and they tell us a ton about water quality. Depending on what type of larva we have will tell us how healthy our stream is. And it's a nearly free way to really go out, get your kids in a stream for starters. You can do this in almost any body of water. If it's deep enough to have larvae in it, you can look for them. And you can have your students do, again, math and graphing to determine how healthy their water is. And it's actually kind of a complicated math process, so it's kind of fun to get into with them. So any questions on like the resources, how to use them in the classroom, anything like that, so for citizen science in general? Yes?
How safe are these as far as, people will always put in things that shouldn't be there? Like, I know that we're restricted at times, but now they've kind of opened it up more to our judgment. So in your judgment, as you're looking at this, have people put things on there that you've gone, ooh, that shouldn't be there? Or,
I've never once, not a single time, had that happen. I've never come across anything that's like overly adult or doesn't belong on the website, or not once. And I've been using these for a little over a decade now. Most of these have been around. So pretty safe. I don't know if somebody continually monitors it, or if like people who are citizen scientists in general are just not nasty people. That may be part of it. I mean, if you've got a heart of volunteerism, you're probably not a horrible person. So I've never I've never once come across something that didn't belong there. And safety-wise, too, as far as like actually collecting the data, I mean, sort of depends on your habitat, your environment, and the kids and what you're collecting. But really, it's designed to be done by the average person. And a lot of people who do this are people who are elderly and retired. So you don't necessarily have to have a lot of like great healthy bodily skills to go do these things. For instance, like, I mean, the macroinvertebrates, if you can just get to the edge of a stream and flip over rocks, you've got a project. Butterflies, you can literally lie down on the ground and look up for 10 minutes and record what you see. So you don't necessarily have to have special equipment. You don't necessarily have to go anywhere dangerous. I'm actually going to show you guys in a minute how we can do this out here. So if some of you teach at urban schools where you've got a really limited amount of wildlife, I'll show you how you can actually still do a little mini bio blitz, even without having, the state parks up to your backyard. So, any other questions? Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do next is I've got a project for you guys. We're going to use iNaturalist, so when we go, make sure you have that open on your phone and ready to go. And for some of the apps, I don't know if it goes this way on Android, but I know it gives you an option to like click Add Project on the bottom, or turn on, or I think it's report to project or something like that. Make sure that's on so that when you report that it actually goes to our project, because otherwise I can't necessarily track you and I'll have to go around the room to see who won. But when it works right, it is a really easy way to track, say, what your students are doing and how much information they collected. And what we're going to do is I'm going to give each of you a ruler if I have enough. If I don't, I'll pair you up in teams. And you have 12 inches of space outside, and I don't care if you pick a stretch of grass, if you pick a stretch of pavement, if you go underneath a tree, as long as you're within a certain area in the parking lot. And I want you to try to track in the time that we're out there, we'll probably give you about 10 to 15 minutes, how many living species that you see, and report as many as you can to iNaturalist. That can include grass, and if you don't know the exact species, put in grasses, I don't care. If you see insects, if a bird lands near you, by all means, you can track that too. But whatever you see within that 12 inches of space that you're on the ground, we'll give you hand lenses. You can get close if you need to dig around a little bit in that space, as long as you put back whatever you found, because we want to leave no trace. That is fine by me, but whatever you find in that space, I want to see it pop up on our iNaturalist. And we'll kind of try to get an idea of just how much wildlife actually lives within just 1 foot of distance outside. So that way, all you really need is, if you've got grass that sticks out of a crack in your sidewalk at your school, you guys can go outside and do citizen science, because I guarantee at minimum you're going to find some ants or flies or something. So any questions before we go outside? So what we'll do is come on up and get a ruler, and if you would like one, hand lens. Okay, so find a location anywhere that's either like in this patch of grass here or underneath these trees. Kind of stay like within, like from this purple sign to the corner, or this patch of grass immediately across the street. Set your ruler down and look within that 12-inch stretch for any signs of wildlife.
Okay, well, while you guys, please continue to go ahead and continue to tally your observations that you just made. And I'm gonna, seriously, I just wanted to join this presentation today, and I'm gonna just try to keep it down. I see we're kind of short on time. I'm gonna try to squeeze it into like 10 minutes or less. But I just, as our resident mathematician here, and especially working with high school students, what really spoke to me was what Angie talked about in the very beginning, with reluctance of our learners coming in. And my math people out there, I know you feel me, that there is even added anxiety in our math classroom. So above just the general anxiety, oftentimes students come in very fixed mindset, thinking that they can't do math, having had some kind of experiences that lead them to believe that. And so it's very tricky. And hey, we're talking about teenagers here, getting high schoolers to get motivated about these things. We were just talking about even just to pull them away from video games and whatnot and even get them outside. But once we start to do that, we have amazing things happening in the classroom. And so that's just, I felt really inspired just to come in here and just share some examples of ways that we actually at Ivy get a chance to go out and this is in a high school math classroom, so not too easy to do. It's pretty tricky once you are really trying to, cover your standards and get through it in the time frame that you have, and then feel like, wait, how do we get these kids out there? How do I get them outside? How do I get them moving? What can we do? How do I bring in the citizen science? So just wanted to show you that it can be done. So if I can do it in high school math classroom, you can do it in your classrooms, and it's awesome for just any age level and across all content areas. And that's something really this piece, Chassie and I are gonna kind of team up together, but I just really wanted to give math the plug, and then she's gonna come in and bring it home with how you can really see it as a cross-curriculum tool. So, okay, the math piece. So How do we do it? Well, we have to definitely come in at the beginning of the year and just kind of like start fresh. Set this new mindset for our students. So I like to call this slide the math paradigm shift. How do we do it? One, we couldn't do it if we couldn't build relationships with our students. That's just paramount. That's what this conference is about. It's about really reaching the whole child. So we start off by building those relationships. And inviting students, the second way is to really invite students to see math in a different way. I still have some of my students thinking that math is a spectator sport. They want to sit back, let me just let them know what's up, but that's not how we are going to be able to be successful in math, because math is something that we have to do. So I love it. I think it fits in perfectly with our mission and what we're trying to share with you today, to get kids engaged and to get them motivated and excited about what they're doing. So it's been so fun. I want to show you some things that we've been doing in my math classroom. Here are a couple of pictures, and I'm just going to try to speak briefly and move forward because I have a few little action pieces that I want to do with you. This first one over here, as Angie was saying, we do have just an amazing campus to work with, but you don't even have to have that kind of a campus wherever you are, just taking the time to take kids outside. We were doing a hike here to review before testing. We will go out for the citizen science piece. It's the time that we used to go out and collect data and then even, organize, analyze that data. I created an escape room. I don't know how many of you guys have done escape rooms or taken your students out there. It's one of my favorite things. I'm just like a puzzle nerd like that. And so I created this one. This one was called something like, I forget the name of it, it was like Finding the Case of Brewster. Brewster, our missing rooster. So we have chickens and roosters and some bunnies on our campus. Brewster was all the kids' favorite rooster. And so I had him taken, he was rooster napped, and they had a series of suspects, and they would evaluate and eliminate to find clues. I think I had about 8 lock boxes with different combinations hidden all throughout the room, and they had to work together as a team to solve puzzles. It got them together, got them cooperating. It was great. Algebra 2 kids especially, who are very tricky to motivate, love that one. Stations, if you're doing stations inside, you can do stations outside. I mean, it's as simple as just going out there. This is a find the error. We really focus on that. Mistakes are a great thing. Mistakes allow thinking to happen, and we really try to emphasize that. Yes, you can use graph paper to make a coordinate plane, but you can also use a stick on the dirt outside, like these guys over here were doing. We are in the process right now of actually laying down the foundation for a new basketball court out there, and I've suggested that we go ahead and make center court, the origin, 0-0, and go ahead and get us a life-size coordinate plane out there. I tried to do this with string and chalk, and it can get kind of crazy, but it's definitely worth trying. It's awesome. I could see the potential for this in so many different fields and also for many different age groups. Go find coordinate. Go stand on 5-6. Where are we at? And then for me, it would be in building functions. So I want to transition into something right here. This is easy, and I'm hoping that you can just adapt what I'm about to show you for whatever it is you do for your students out there. This is a Miss Reed original. I totally made this up. I use this with Algebra 2 if we're in transition, or even as we're learning some new material or to review stuff. And I'll show you how it worked, and it actually followed through my curriculum for the year. So if you guys would, stand up for me. I like to call these function stretches. Function stretches. So a little trickery to get us actually up and mobile and moving. And isn't this going to be nice right now? I feel like my back will pop in doing this. It'll be great. So as I tell the kids, so they often forget. They're like, Miss Reed, wait a minute, what's vertical, which one's horizontal? If we stretch enough in horizontal position and we stretch enough like this, this becomes a lot easier to remember. And then we move it to vertical, and now we're vertical, mostly. And now let's see if we can create a line with a positive slope. So as you're going from left to right, you should be going up the hill. And now let's see if you can do negative slope with a line. Easy, we got this, we got this. Let's see a parabola. Who can do y equals x squared? Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can. So you're making a U with your arms like this. We're at y equals x squared. Check it out, guys. Check this out. Y equals 3x squared. Guess what we've done? We've just dilated. Now we're a little more narrow. Y equals 1/2 x squared. We're a little bit wider. Watch this. Y equals x squared plus 2. Move it up 2. Now we've oh yeah, you guys can't move up. I was like, no one knows it. No one's with me. You're not with me. And we could go on. We're going to be running out of time. Excellent job, guys. By the way, I give you a downward opening parabola bow of excellent job. I've got one more for you, maybe. I don't know if we'll be able to do it. We'll see. But that's easy. But even as our standards moved into transformations, so we're taking like a parent function and we're moving it somewhere on the graph. This was a lot of fun. We can get outside, we can go, and students love it because they get a chance, and I can formatively assess right there on the spot. The other one I wanted to do with you, and I really don't want to dip into chassis time, so I think I'm gonna, maybe we can't all do this one, but this one is cool. I will kind of demonstrate just a little bit. So when we're teaching about angle relationships, and even whether or not parallel lines, but usually, so I'll take some masking tape, and by the way, this is not a Miss Reed original. I definitely got this picture and this slide from this website right here, but there's a lot more where this came from. There's even music to this. So this is Dance Dance Transversal. Have you guys ever played DDR, Dance Dance Revolution? Yeah, so you know how you're playing and you gotta step in time and use your dance move. That's what this is based off of, but this is Dance Dance Transversal, DDT, like we like to call it. So at first I teach them just the positions. What are these angles, right? These are alternate exterior, alternate interior, corresponding same side. So we would go over that, so the students would have had that knowledge, and then we go and we mark it, the parallel lines, cut it with a transversal with masking tape on the floor, just like you see here, and then I will shout out different moves. So I'll say, all right, give me some corresponding. So they'll go and they'll jump right into corresponding, and I'll say alternate exterior. It's great. You can see right there. You can just watch their feet, and it's an awesome time to just, in the moment, be able to say, oh, almost, hey, let's fix that or whatnot. But also, it's a great workout. The kids, well, I'm tired by the end. Kids, easier for them. I just want to share 2 more things that we did, just because we had so much fun doing it. It was cool. We got in partners here. This was with my geometry class. This was using indirect measurement. So we had to do a little bit of trig here, right? But we can actually, you could scale this down or up, however, depending on what grade level you have. But we basically made these clinometers out of a protractor and a straw, and just brought a string with a weight on it, and it just is a way that you can measure the angle of elevation. And then we found something really big. So that's the cool thing about this one too. I wanted to make sure you didn't feel like it was just something like we could do at Ivy. We have a lot of trees around, but at my last school, we didn't. So we would maybe measure something like a really tall building, telephone pole, anything huge. And there are a lot of great resources on how to make a clinometer that's easily Googleable. I don't know that that's a word, but you can Google it. And this is a great partner activity, easy for the kids. I have them draw it out. And by the end, they can guesstimate roughly, how tall that really high object that would pretty much be impossible to sit there with yardsticks and measuring tape to discover. Last one I just wanted to share is we started something this year for first and soon to be, I guess, annual Ivy exhibit night. We invited our parents and our students, our community in to just come see some of the work that we had done, and I really wanted to showcase some of the standards that we had done. And I wanted to do it for both my geometry class and my algebra too. And so kind of snuck in a way here for us to use probability standards. So for geometry, they had to create, well, for both groups, they had to create an original project that's like a carnival style project that they could have other kids come and play the games and actually collect the experimental data. So it was really about the data collection and their understanding of probability. With Algebra 2, it was actually about more like the odds. We had a lot of really cool original card games and things like that. So kind of playing the odds. And then with geometry, it was more about comparing the area of a bullseye or a target to the whole area. I really like this group. I just wanted to point this group out, actually. Dana might recognize that guy right there. But yeah, funny enough though, they had a really cool project because they were actually doing an experiment within the project. So they actually had the 2 duck ponds, and one, when you picked it up each time, they would actually replace it again. And so that would keep the probability consistent. And in the other duck pond, every time someone went up and went fishing, took out a duck, they left it out. And so they had to keep a running log of the differences in that probability, so with and without replacement. I thought that was great, and this is all original thinking from the kids. So I just love that for them. I'm sorry, Chassie. I'm going to turn it over to Chassie, but the kids love it. They're having a great time. I highly recommend citizen science, movement, outdoor learning.
Show you a really quick talk about some cross-curriculum projects that I did using an environmental education and citizen science as an anchor. My 8th grade English, my 8th grade social studies teacher partner was starting to get ready for the Transcendentalist movement. So that's Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson. If you're not familiar, some of the famous authors that are part of that movement. And at the same time, those same students were doing tree phenology in their science class, in their citizen science class. So my kids were having a really hard time analyzing it. Symbolism was going straight over their heads. And so we were really working on finding the deeper meaning. So we actually read the Lorax, which obviously a children's book, but has a very important deep meaning to it. And the kids had to write a literary analysis over that. And so they were all kind of being surrounded by this idea of taking care of our environment, the importance of monitoring what's going on around them, and how it's connected not only to what's happening now on our planet, but also what was going on years ago when we first started the National Park Movement, and we have these famous authors and what they stood for. Another thing I would like to hit on super quick is what I did with my ag science kids. So on your resource sheet there, it tells you the Real World Scholars Program. So it is not necessarily a citizen science-based thing. It's actually to bring entrepreneurship to your schools. You win a grant. It's a grant program. They give you $1,000 for you to start your own business. And so my kids decided to build bat boxes for their business. They actually raised about $1,000 selling them. We sold them for $40 a piece. This was cross-curricular because bats are actually an extremely important mammal, for an animal, for our ecosystems. They can eat about 1,000 insects an hour. And so for farmers, so they do not have to use so much pesticides, if they had bats on their property, it's actually a really great thing for them. It saves them money and it's better for their crops. So the kids had to purchase all the supplies. So they got a lot of business math in there. They also had to measure out. So we got a lot of geometry, angles, and I got to teach them how to use a circular saw and a power drill. So as a female teacher, I just thought that was super awesome because I got to be the one that housed the toolbox in my class. So it won me a lot of rep, with my boy students. But they did everything. They completely assembled the bat boxes and then went out to the community. So also used a lot of their English skills with public speaking, and they had to write up brochures. So it crossed all kinds of planes. Very quick, our last project Katie and I are working on together that centers on environmental education and citizen science is a wolf project that we're currently going to be using to start off our school year. We were hoping to have a summer course this year, but it didn't really pan out for us. But red wolves are an endangered species. They're actually the only wolves that are actually from our area that are native. The gray wolves have migrated down from Canada, so they're actually from the southeastern part of the United States. You don't really hear about them because there's only about 70 in the wild, and those are North Carolina and in Florida. Chattanooga has a captive breeding program at our nature center. So we were able to go, Dana and I went, we had a great PD where we learned about this. And so there's an actual facility in our community that the kids can go and see these red wolves. And so Katie and I had planned a cross-curricular escape room that involved chemistry. Kids are going to be doing chemical equations and chemical reactions, an Algebra 2 equation to measure skid marks so we could figure out if the person hit the wolf on purpose. Had to do with history and government, because the big thing out west, if you talk about the gray wolves and even the population of the red wolves, it's a state and federal kind of argument there. So tons of history and government standards. English, my kids are reading American Wolf by Nate Blakesley for their summer reading. I apologize for talking so fast. I just know that I'm out of time. And so it had to do with exactly what we're going into for the beginning of the school year. So as a classroom teacher, I cannot tell you enough that even if it seems overwhelming doing this as an English teacher, it was able to, using citizen science and environmental education as a focus, has just created a lot of positive impact in my classroom. It has allowed for me to talk to my other teachers, my cohort. It's allowed conversations for us to happen. And it really gets you excited, and it gets the kids excited, because what they're learning is now tangible, because it does affect them in a very obvious way.